So, and the big was one for obesity. Obesity. Sister Rika, please share screen.
everyone. Thank you for choosing Night Sky.
You may start, Brother Rajesh.
Om Shanti Behenji, and thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to our weekly Night Sky online seminar. Thank you for joining in. I know that today is a public holiday and we are celebrating Ganesh Chaturthi. So for all those who have been celebrating, happy Ganesh Chaturthi to everybody. And indeed, it's a great pleasure again to see that a number of you have joined our online program tonight. So very briefly, today we'll proceed along with the health themes that we have had before. And Professor I.Sharma is again our guest speaker tonight. Just to remind you that Professor Sharma has been with us before on a previous talk, and he did mention about natural ways to boost immunity. We learned a lot of things from him about how to fight, for example, COVID, what are the natural ways, for example, natural herbs and common food items that we can consume to boost our immune system and fight diseases. And today it's again a great privilege for us to have Professor I.Sharma among us again to talk about the Ayurvedic approach to obesity. And at the same time, we have one of our colleagues, Dr. Sanjeev Ganesh, who is currently a medical practitioner, and he's joining us as well tonight to give some medical perspectives and some insights into what is obesity from a medical perspective. And I believe that both of us will enlighten us on what is really obesity, how it's causing other diseases as well, and what are the natural ways by which we can try to adopt in order to combat obesity, which is an ever-growing problem in Mauritius, as well as in other places in the world. Okay, so without further ado, I will leave the floor now to Sister Rupa, who is our Brahma Kumari Center Coordinator in here, for a welcoming message. The floor is yours, Sister.
Om Shanti, good evening, and a hearty welcome to today's session. We are really very thankful to our dear respected brother Sharmaji, and also to Brother Rajesh, who has coordinated this program. We know everybody is concerned with our health. Now everyone wants to be healthy, wealthy, and happy in life. And so we are mostly concerned with our food habits, but also along with the food that we take, we don't forget that the food for the mind, that also contributes a lot in our daily life. And so, in fact, the main is the food for the mind, the way we think, because every thought is as the food for the mind. The type of thoughts we feed the mind with, that also brings the state of being someone. Either we are too happy, we are stressful, we are sad. So in that mood, even we are taking the best type of food, that will have an effect on our life, on our health, especially. And especially on our relationship, in our behavior, in every way. So along with the food that we take that has an effect on our health, also we should pay attention to the type of thoughts that are going on in the mind, or the way we are feeding the mind with either positive, negative, stressful, sad, happy thoughts. So today we are celebrating the festival of Ganesh Chaturthi, and that is celebrated with a lot of happiness. And we feel that happiness vibrates because one person is happy, the vibrations goes to others, and we can help others also be happy. So feeding the mind with happy thoughts, with positive thoughts, that also contributes to our daily lifestyle, our relationship, our environment, in every way. And to create those happy thoughts, of course, we need to meditate. Meditation, contemplating on positive and happy thoughts, that also becomes the food for the mind. So say happy welcome also to all of us here on the platform, where we will enjoy all the tips given to us by our dear brother, Professor Sharma ji. Thank you. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Sister Rupa. I would like now to invite Dr. Ganesh, who is also a very close member of Brahma Kumari, and I must say he has been very helpful as well in liaising with us, giving us his time as well in the preparation of not only this program, but most of the programs that are being held on Thursday. He is an active member as well. And Dr. Ganesh is basically, as I mentioned before, a medical practitioner. So he will try to give us, despite the fact that he has got limited time, he will try to condense everything and give us some medical perspectives on obesity. So Dr. Ganesh, the floor is yours now, Dr. Ganesh.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Brother Rajesh, for these nice welcoming words. And thank you, Sister Rupa, for these words of wisdom. I think, yes, it is indeed a good idea that I give a medical perspective to obesity before Professor I.Sharma takes over and explains on the Ayurvedic aspects. Okay, I will be sharing my screen so that you can follow my talk. I'll try to finish in 10 minutes. So what is obesity? Yeah, obesity, as we know, it has become a pandemic actually. Millions of people are being affected by obesity worldwide. So a simple definition for obesity is when there is abnormal or excess fat accumulation in the human body that impairs health. And WHO gives a simple definition of obesity based on BMI. What is BMI? BMI is body mass index. And this is applied across populations. Another way to measure obesity using the cardiometabolic risk assessment is by using the waist circumference. This is not used so much compared to BMI. As mentioned, BMI is used worldwide. It is also ethnic specific, as you'll see. Europeans and Asian standards are different. So that may be surprising to some of you, but that's actually true. And how do we calculate BMI? I'll just move to the next slide to explain to you. BMI is a simple calculation that we use, right? We use the weight of the person in kilograms and we divide it by the height in meters, the square, right? And a normal BMI, normally, if it's less than 25, it's normal. That's for European cutoffs. From 25 to 30, then we consider the person to be overweight. 30 to 35 or above 30 is obese. Even the obese category, we can have the grade 1, class 1, class 2, and class 3 obesity. Let's go back to ethnic specific BMI. So BMI, as I said, less than 25 is normal for Europeans, but for Asians is less than 23, right? And 25 to 29.9 BMI is overweight for Europeans, but above 23 to 24.9 is overweight for Asians. And BMI greater than 30, as I mentioned, is obese for Europeans, but only above 25 is obese for Asians. The other means of measuring obesity is waist circumference. This is sex and ethnic specific. For Asians, males, waist of more than 90 centimeters is considered abnormal, and it has got a higher risk to develop disease. And for Asian females, it is greater than 80. For large waist in European males, above 100 centimeters, and for Europeans is for Asians is 88. I think there's this typing error there. I already explained to you how we measure the BMI. Let's come to the NCD survey that was published in 2015 for Mauritius. And we also have had this recent survey published in 2021, but I don't have the exact figures. From the 215 NCD survey, if you use the BMI cutoff, European BMI cutoff prevalence of obesity would be about 19%, 11% in males and 25% in females in Mauritius. And if we used the ethnic specific cutoffs, you'll be surprised. We have an obesity prevalence of 45.5% in females and 39.5% in males. So why we alarmed about these figures? Because obesity has very significant health implications. Probably a lot of you will be aware. So what are the common health problems related to obesity? People who are obese are more likely to suffer from heart disease, strokes. They also develop type 2 diabetes much earlier. They can develop gallstones. They can get osteoarthritis affecting several joints. They also develop high blood pressure. And obesity is also associated with certain types of cancers, such as colon cancer, breast cancer, kidney cancer, and stomach cancer, and also ovarian and uterine cancers. So how do we develop obesity? Obesity, we can simplify it by saying that it is due to an imbalance in energy. If we're taking too much energy and not expending it, then the excess energy is stored as fat. So it can be simplified as that, as simple as that. So if you burn more and more energy, so we'll gain less weight. So if we take more energy in terms of calories, we'll put on weight. So in the obesity and overweight, what happens? There is positive energy balance. So we not be burning enough calories, but we're taking excess calories. And as mentioned, if you have extra calories, that deposits in our body as fat, and this leads to diseases such as type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancers. So again, energy balance is maintained by regulating energy through diet and adjusting physical activity, and also using combination of both. But it's actually not as simple as this. There are other factors that come into play when we talk about obesity, such as genetics and environmental factors. We can have an influence on environmental factors, but unfortunately not so much on genetics. But as per WHO, obesity can be tackled to a great extent. If we don't tackle it now, it will get worse with time. So the Western way of assessing and treating obesity, we first classify it, as I mentioned earlier, right? And I also mentioned about the waist circumference. From this chart, you can see that it is the waist circumference is very closely related to body fat. So higher the waist circumference, the greater the body fat. And on this chart, you'll see that people who are overweight have more complications and less survival due to medical problems. So what causes obesity and weight gain? As I mentioned earlier, it's mainly environmental factors, socio-economical factors, emotional factors, and some medical factors, which are not very common. So the environmental factors, you probably all know, is lack of proper food. So we're taking high calorie food, high dense food, full of fat and salt, and depleted of minerals. Socio-economic factors, we don't exercise, we travel long distances to our place of work, and we live a sedentary lifestyle. Emotional factors such as stress. When we stress, there are certain stress hormones that are released, and then that causes the body to accumulate fat. The less common medical factors are more complicated. We can have conditions like endocrine disorders like hypothyroidism, diseases like Cushing's, which are not common, that commonly seen. So again, we have to find out why the person is gaining weight, and so we find out whether it's due to slow metabolism, or is it due to high energy intake, or is it due to reduced activity, physical activity. So slow metabolism, as we age, our metabolism goes down and we burn less calories, and our hormones also affect us in this way. Genetics play a part, and we also lose muscle bulk, muscles, and then we store fat, right? The second factor related to increased food intake, as I mentioned, sociocultural factors. So we don't eat the proper food. We eat more food containing fat, less vegetables and fruits, and we eat when we stress. And certain medications can also cause us to gain weight. The third factor is we gain weight due to reduced physical activity. So we don't exercise, we have medical problems, we have sociocultural problems, there's no facilities to do sports. People are using screen a lot. They spend time in front of TV and in front of their computer and laptops and mobile phones more. So they don't exercise enough. What is recommended actually is for a child to exercise for 1 hour every day, as per WHO recommendation. And for an adult, it is 150 hours per week. So what do? Is we find what are the obesity risks present in the person, and then we try to get the person to lose weight, but we don't ask them if they are 20 kilograms overweight or they're obese. We don't ask them to lose 20 kilograms. We ask them to lose about 5 to 7% of their body weight. That is more achievable, and that does have medical benefits, right? And this is long lasting and has long-term benefits compared to trying to reach targets that are not practical and not sustainable. And we also discuss what are the treatment options that we have for obesity. So obesity is not a simple problem. It is related to diet, excess energy, lack of exercise, and also genetics to some extent. So when we lose weight, that can happen quickly over 3 to 6 months. But with time, we know that patients who manage to lose weight through diet and exercise, they gradually to start picking up weight. And that's where we have to intervene and try to maintain the curve down. So when you stop the treatment, the disease comes back. As you probably all know, those of you who have tried to diet, you've tried different types of diet, Atkins, whatever, and you've managed to lose 5 or 10 kilos. And then once you stop the diet, you quickly pick up these kilos. And as we said, fat is stubborn and it doesn't leave you. So the treatment options that we have, as I mentioned, we aim to lose about 3 to 5% of our initial weight. Maybe in diabetics, maybe 5 to 7% is low beneficial. But factors that are important are sleep, proper sleep, reduced stress, diet, physical activity, psychological well-being such as meditation, taking low-calorie diets, using anti-obesity medications, and sometimes when there's morbid obesity, we even consider surgery. So what are the anti-obesity medications that we have? We have several ones available locally. Orlistat is one of them, which prevents the absorption of fat from the gastrointestinal tract. Unfortunately, it causes bloating and foul-smelling stools. There's one medication called phentermine, which stimulates the one hormone in the brain, which acts as an appetite suppressant. However, there are side effects such as elevated blood pressure and irregular heartbeats associated with this medication. And there's another medication called subitramine, which stimulates the satiety center in the brain. Unfortunately, it cannot be used in patients with heart problems, hypertension, liver and kidney disease. And we recently now have these incretins medications, which are given intramuscularly and also now orally available. These are GLP-1 analogs, which are also used to control diabetes. And how they work is they increase glucagon in the body, and that induces satiety. That means we feel full after a meal. And that's the way we take less calories and we lose weight. Unfortunately, they can also cause problems such as they can cause, rarely can cause pancreatitis, which is inflammation of the pancreas. And lastly, for patients with morbid obesity with BMI less than greater than 35 or 40, which is affecting the health, we can consider surgery. Bariatric surgery is very effective for significant weight loss. We can lose up to 10 to 15 kilograms weight quite rapidly. And it can also reverse diabetes in those with morbid obesity. There are different methods that we use. Some of them prevent absorption of minerals and calories from the gut. What is done is gastric bypass surgery. This is a malabsorptive process where the small bowel is bypassed and food that we ingest goes to the large bowel, and we don't absorb enough the calories that we take, and we lose weight. And there's another technique called the restrictive technique, where they use the gastric bands around the stomach, which makes the stomach small so that the person cannot eat a lot. When he eats a few spoonfuls of food, he's already full, and that's the way he loses weight. And sometimes these two can be combined, but these are to the far extreme that we use to treat obesity. As you can see, lifestyle changes can bring down weight to about 3 to 5%. Medications combined with lifestyle change, 5 to 15%, and lifestyle change and surgery, that is most significant, 20 to 30% with time. And I think I will end my brief talk. I hope that you had an idea of what is obesity and how we try to tackle it from the Western medical point of view. And now I'd like to get Prof. Sharma to enlighten us on Ayurvedic ways to tackle obesity.
Yeah, maybe can I start, Dr. Ganesh?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you very much. This was wonderful to revisit all the basics regarding obesity. And good evening to all. First of all, to begin with, Ayurveda has got a very wonderful take when it comes to obesity, and for last 10,000 years, what it has been mentioning, and these principles are so befitting as we explore them more and more. So Ayurveda has told that obesity will be directly leading to so many problems. It is not one problem. It is a janani, like it's the mother of many other complications, as rightly highlighted by Dr. Ganesh. And this surely is maybe this can be labeled as the problem of the century, because this is the most important modifiable risk factor when it comes to premature death or any or many complications. This is the one factor which we can directly control, because there are some factors which are called unmodifiable because we cannot control. Like we get cancers sometimes when we age, you cannot control age. We get some diseases because of genetics and heredity, we might not control them. So those are called unmodifiable factors which we cannot regulate, but this is the one, obesity, body weight, and like some addictions like smoking. These two are the most important modifiable factors which are responsible for a host of diseases. Ayurveda has given like all the complications ranging from your reduced physical activity, heart diseases, arthritis, and depression, so many psychological disorders, and like the list is endless. If we come to like what does Ayurveda believe is the cause when it comes to obesity or overweight? Ayurveda was very clear that excessive food consumption and very particularly high calorie food intake is the biggest cause, surely coupled with reduced physical activity. And that is why, very interestingly, when it comes to the treatment part, Ayurveda has suggested to eat more food. This is something very strange, Ayurveda, but very logical. Ayurveda has advised, this is in Sanskrit, this is called Guru Aptarpana. Guru means more food, but Aptarpana means it should be depleting, as Dr. Ganesh pointed out, like negative energy and positive energy. The food should be consuming more energy in getting digested than it give eventually. If you eat such a food which takes more calories in getting consumed, getting digested, and after the digestion is complete, it does not give you any calorie, that is called a negative food. And this is the best treatment which we can apply to an overweight patient or an obese person. So Guru Aptarpana. And what can be those Guru Aptarpana? What can be those foods Ayurveda has told? All the vegetables, salads, and not so sweet fruits. So more and more of vegetables, salads, and the not so sweet fruits are Guru Aptarpana, because they have got more of complex carbohydrates. And complex carbohydrates, they consume a lot of energy in getting broken down. And sometimes, because those don't contain sugars and those are not very, very sweet fruits, for example, they end up giving no calorie or very, very few calories. So on the other hand, if you want to put on weight, then Ayurveda has told Laghu Santarpana, that is, small frequent meals should be taken to put on weight, but those small meals should be high on calorie. And Ayurveda has very clearly told, if you have to choose, if a doctor has to choose among two sets of patients, one who's underweight and the other set who's overweight, the underweight patients will always be doing much better than the overweight ones. That is, Ayurveda has very clearly told, obesity will be coming with a baggage of complications. So has very clearly indicated 10,000 years back that treating an underweight patient is much more simpler, easier than treating someone who's overweight. If you are a normal body weight, then that is the best thing. But if you have to choose one, doctor cannot choose, doctor will be treating all. But the message was treating those who are not healthy with like a lack of weight, that set is much more easier to treat than those who have got more body weight. As obesity, surely because of its complications, this is like a grave condition, as rightly pointed out by Dr. Ganesh. It has got its mechanical complications like arthritis and heart diseases, and it has got its slow metabolic complications as well when it comes to many cancers and diabetes and other disorders. It can mechanically lead to sleep apnea as well, as rightly pointed out, because fat accumulation in the throat area can lead to epiglottic edema or fat deposition, which would be obstructing breathing. And such a patient surely otherwise when has to go for like other treatments like CPAP or other things or surgery, etc. Weight loss is the most important advice. Now, why doesn't this help? Because many times even the health authorities are not able to transfer the responsibility to the individuals. And we as an individual, we look up to the health authorities or magic medicine or a magic pill, what should I do? Like I take my medicine for my blood pressure or my arthritis or something. But this obesity might not. If you cannot take care of your diet and exercise, then many medicines or many tablets and surgeries might not help. That is where we have to take control when it comes to obesity and almost all non-communicable diseases for that reason. So that is where we have to aware the masses, the public, that they should be looking within when it comes to fighting obesity or any NCD, non-communicable diseases. Then waiting to catch them up and then waiting for some magic remedy to take care. Obesity can directly link to, because it's fat accumulation. Fatty liver is a very common problem, which is a very commonly encountered with overweight persons, and the populations are growing. One study, as Dr. Ganesh told, like 45% of males and 39% of females in Mauritius are obese. One study says if overweight included, if you are beyond like 23.5 of your BMI, if we include overweight as well, then the percentage goes to 52% of population, which is very high. What can be the treatment? Food is the most important medicine. And that is where small changes, Ayurveda has very clearly told, Ayurveda calls food as Maha Bhaishaj. Maha means the biggest and Bhaishaj means medicine. So what is the biggest medicine? Your food. Because you are consuming it multiple times a day throughout your life, the day we were born to the day when we die, we keep eating. So we never give a miss. And many of us have not experienced what is real hunger. We are not driven by the biological clock, or we don't look inside, but we are driven by the wall clock. We see it is like 12 o'clock in the noon time, it's a lunch time. The body might not be requiring food, but because the clock says it is 12 o'clock, we end up eating. And this is happening every time, every day. We meet many patients because we see hundreds of patients each day. Most of them tell that we don't feel like eating, we are not hungry, but then we have to eat because we would go weak. So we have to eat in time now. More are dying of overeating than starvation. Food scarcity is killing lesser than the food surplus is killing. And we all are the targets, and we are slowly like inching towards, we are welcoming diseases. That is where we have to take stock, and some very simple tips as mentioned by Ayurveda can be very helpful if we focus upon diet only. The most important principle will be not to eat when you are not hungry. So because we all influence a big society, there being like 20-30 people only on this talk, but we all know hundreds in families and friends. So you should be waiting for the real hunger to come, and you should not be eating before that. It can be days without food, no issue at all. The problem is if you do not eat for 1 day, 2 days, still your body is very fit, fine. You are full of energy, but the mind is very crooked. It would be making you think, when did I eat last? Oh, I took my meal like 2 days back. Then I should be very weak. I should be very hungry. What would happen to me? Nothing is happening to you. You are working very fine. You are very light, happy, full of energy. But the mind would be making you think that no, because I have not eaten, so I might be getting weak or some problem, then body is giving you a signal not to eat, but we like override and we go ahead with consuming food. So not to eat when you are not hungry is the most important principle which Ayurveda suggests for us. And how do we come to know that are we eating out of lust? Or are we eating out of appetite, or is it real hunger? Lust can be like when you have taken your meal and out of nowhere you see something very delicious. Then we can be greedy, or we could be like, okay, we should eat this. There is no appetite, you are full, but still seeing something very delicious out of nowhere, you end up eating that. That particular dish is removed from your sight, and then you don't long for that, you don't chase that, and you don't eat that. This is one kind of eating which can be labeled as lust. The second can be appetite. Appetite is when you are tuned to eating at particular times. Like 8 o'clock you take your breakfast, 12 o'clock you take your lunch. Then every time, every day, all your life you are taking meals at that particular time, then your body is conditioned to that appetite. But that appetite conditioning might be wrong. You might have to reset your circadian clock and your biological clock. And the third one, which is a real one, is hunger, when you are really wanting to eat and you are happy with whatever food is available. There could be some dishes which you don't normally like and you don't eat them, and you have not eaten, you have not consumed them in years. Like there could be some particular dish which you don't like and you did not eat it for last 10 years. But today, because you are really hungry, that particular dish, you will be welcoming, you will feel happy consuming that, and that is the real hunger. So we have to wait for it, and we have to go for intermittent fasting. Ayurveda has very clearly told, whenever you are in a doubt, we should eat or not. Whenever there is the littlest confusion or a double thought, should I eat or not? Your answer should be forever. Your answer has to be no. Because if you miss a few meals, if you miss your breakfast, then you don't take your lunch as well, then in the dinner time, you will not be confused. Then you know that you have to eat because you are really hungry. When there is no confusion, then you should eat. Then Ayurveda says, this again is very simple tip, but very, very important. You have to eat slowly. Because the satiety center, what we have in brain, the satiety center responds not only to the food volume you eat, that is how much you eat, but it also responds, it is also controlled by the length of time. How long you have been eating, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes. So if your appetite, for example, lasts for 10 minutes, in those 10 minutes, if you are overweight, you will observe, you can ask your friends, you can observe them. Those who are overweight will be very quick to eat. They will eat fast because somewhere their subconscious mind knows that you have to put in maximum in those 10 minutes. If you play this trick and you eat slowly, you chew every bite, and after every bite, you should relax, you should step back, you can look left and right, then you go for your next bite. That is how if you buy more time, if you take more time, that is you eat slowly, you will end up eating lesser volumes. This is very important. And eating slowly will release more gastric juices, more digestive juices will be released, more saliva would be released. And all these digestive juices will be ensuring a better digestion. Another very important error what we commit when it comes to eating is many of us being too busy, or they believe they are so busy that eating food is a waste of time. Why not to have a luncheon meeting? Why not to watch television? Because when we are eating, then we are wasting time, and we should use, we can listen to some music, talk to someone or whatever. When you are distracted by a television or chatting or in a business meeting, wherever, if you are not focusing upon your food, then you end up producing lesser digestive juices. Your saliva, hydrochloric acid, bile, pancreatic juice, and succus entericus. These are the 5 very important digestive juices, which normally we produce 7 to 8 liters per day. If you are not concentrating, if you are not cherishing your meal, if you don't enjoy your meal, you don't look at your meal properly, you don't smell it properly, you don't chew it properly, you would be producing lesser and lesser gastric juices than required. And it will lead to indigestion, malabsorption. Whatever you eat will not be processed very well, and it will not be available to give energy to you, and it will not be available to give nutrition to you. On the other hand, you might not be knowing how much did you eat, because sometimes you would be eating for half an hour, as kids do, because their television program is half an hour long. So that is where you have to focus. Ayurveda has told you should always eat when you are alone or with very close family. Eating in a group is not suggested by Ayurveda. So maybe if we come to what are like some other changes, what we can bring in. Physical activity is very, very important, as suggested by Dr. Ganesh. 150 minutes of active physical activity every week is very important. Now, if you are very agile, you are young, you are athletic, you are very strong, then you can overdo, you can do more than this, or you can do more rigorous activities during this slot of 150 minutes. If you are aged or you have got some limitations, then you could be doing lighter activities, but try to clock 150 minutes per week. This is a standard figure which would apply to someone who's old or young. Surely if you're very old, you have got arthritis, then you cannot run. You would be walking very slowly. But okay, you should walk slow, but try to clock 150 minutes because that will be really very helpful. Now, Ayurveda has got a very important principle of Agni. Agni, we can also translate it as metabolism, your digestive fire. Ayurveda says, Aharam pachti shikhi doshan ahar varjayet. That is, your metabolic fire, your digestive fire would be processing your food. But if you devoid food, if you don't take food, then your fire would be redirected to combust, to burn your toxins, your diseases. And this very principle, when experimented in another model by Dr. Ohosumi from Japan, this very principle got him the Nobel Prize. If you Google the Nobel Prize for autophagy, what is autophagy? Auto means self and phagy means to eat. That is eating oneself. Professor Ohosumi, he experimented on some yeast model, and he could see when those yeast model were not fed regularly, then their vacuoles, that is, like we have got lysosomes in the cells, lower species have got something called vacuoles. Vacuoles were combusting, destroying their cellular toxins. Inside the cell, only toxins were the first to be burnt, to be destroyed, to be combusted when food was not given. Now, this one discovery got him Nobel Prize. And the same principle was told by Ayurveda 10,000 years ago, that if you do not eat, if you do not overeat, or if you go for intermittent fasting, your energy, your metabolism, your Agni, your digestive fire would be redirected to burn away your toxins at your cellular level. So that is where whatever culture you observe, every culture would be suggesting some form of periodic fasting. It could be Navaratri for the Hindus twice every year, or it could be fasting on a particular day, like Tuesday for Hanumanji, or it could be Monday for Shivji, or it could be Ramadan by Muslims. Whatever ethnicity, whatever culture you explore, there will always be a very high place for some form of intermittent fasting. Mahatma Gandhi did tell it from the naturopathy angle. Lal Bahadur Shastri, who was another Indian Prime Minister, suggested to fast regularly to counter the dependence of the foreign dependency during the China-India war. So it could be finances, it could be some religion, it could be your health, the most important. Given any context, given any pretext, intermittent fasting is beyond doubt going to help you. Now, very interestingly, Ayurveda believes in Vata Pitta Kapha. Ayurveda told 10,000 years back how much of your appetite should be satisfied with solid meal, liquid meal, and left empty. Because the matter has got three states: solid, liquid, gas. Ayurveda told 50% of your appetite should be satisfied with solid meal, 25% by liquid, and the remaining 25% should be left empty. You should never eat 100%. You should only eat 75% of your appetite. And 25% should be left empty for the movement of the food and gastric juices. Now, very interestingly, if you Google something called calorie restriction theory, this is a series of experiments which is going on for last 50 years. If you Google calorie restriction theory, they came up with a very interesting result. What they did was, they took some laboratory animals, and those were given foods in varying concentrations. They know that these laboratory animals, these rats will be eating this much of food. One set was given 100% food. Another set was given 90% of the food required by the rats every day. Then the third set was given 80%, then 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, you know. They gave different food quantities to different lab set of animals. What they observed after a few weeks, the experimental animals which were fed between 70 to 80% of their diet were the healthiest. And this experiment was conducted 30 years back. Now they came to a figure: you have to eat between 70 to 80% of your appetite. And the same principle, 75%, was told by Ayurveda 10,000 years back. And the next outcome was of the research: those animals which consumed between 70 to 80% of their appetite, they lived in that very lifespan, they lived up to 140% of their life expectancy. In that very lifespan, they lived 40% extra life. And when the same experiment was performed upon human beings, it was observed that after 3 weeks of intermittent fasting, their cancer markers in their blood and cardiac markers in their blood went down by 65%. Now, what is a cardiac marker? Cardiac marker is a blood test which would be indicating that you might have some heart disease like cholesterol, bad cholesterol, triglycerides, blood pressure. Then there are cancer markers also. We can test our blood. Like you could be knowing that there are some very common cancer markers like CEA, CA19, a prostate specific antigen. There are many blood tests. If we undertake those tests, then we can come to know that we are at risk to have heart diseases and cancers or not. So human beings came down, those experimental human beings showed a reduction by 65% in their risk factors in their blood with intermittent fasting. So there are so many researches, like it could be calorie restriction theory or autophagy, which very strongly prove that under eating is only going to help. In no condition, Ayurveda never suggested to overeat. Even if you could be very weak, you could be very low on blood pressure or whatever, in no condition, never, no exception, Ayurveda has suggested you to overeat. So maybe very small maybe changes with the diet patterns can make can bring out a huge outcome. Maybe I don't know if I overshot my time to speak. If some questions are there, then maybe we can have some interaction. Dr. Rajesh, please.
Thank you, Professor Sharma. Maybe before I proceed, maybe I would like to leave the floor to the audience. If they have any comment or any question which we can take. Yes, members from the audience, any question? Or if you don't want to speak up, maybe you can just send us a message on the chat box. We'll be very pleased to respond to you. If there is you can still, if I'm talking, you can still interrupt me or raise your hand. I'll leave the floor to you, or you can just send a message on chat, and then we'll take the question on board. In the meantime, what I will do is possibly I will just do a very quick summary for 1 or 2 minutes. Yes, we've got one question here from again from one of my students. Caloric restriction is more better than intermittent fasting.
Yeah, actually, maybe Dr. Jivan, can I respond, or maybe you would like to attend?
Okay, you proceed, and then I'll back you up.
Yes, please, yeah. So there is no difference actually, because calorie restriction is a more quantitative figure. That is like you really reduce some calorie intake. Intermittent fasting again is a subjective term, because now most of time they like complement each other, but sometimes you are going for intermittent fasting. That is, you are missing your 1 meal a day, for example, but you could be compensating by eating over calorie food in your next meal or previous meal. That would be serving no purpose. That is where you have to be very careful, because one size might not fit all. Like, for example, Ramadan fast might not fit all, or Navratra might not fit all, or a Tuesday fasting. In your every meal, you could be. Now, one very important thing I forgot to mention, Ayurveda has very clearly told how many times normally can we eat. If you are a yogi, that is, you are a very enlightened spiritual person, you are a guru, you are a rishi. Maybe I believe all understand what is a yogi. A yogi would be eating once a day. A bhogi means a worldly person, an average person like we are, like I am, an ordinary person. A yogi would be eating once a day. A bhogi or a normal worldly person would be eating twice a day. A rogi, that is a patient, would be eating thrice a day. So the third meal you are taking is actually for the doctors, so that they can survive. That is where eating once a day or twice a day it mostly would suit all. So any form of intermittent fasting or calorie restriction, it could come every day. Even you can eat 3 meals a day, but every time you are taking by your appetite, by your real hunger, and you are consuming 75% only, then you could be eating 3 meals a day. Or you want to compensate like once in a week, once in a month. What is your style? What makes you happy is very important. Yeah, Dr. Rajesh.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Sharma. Possibly just to back you up on this one. Yes, there has been experiment which has been done on worms. And, it's not only for obesity, it's not only for weight loss, but with caloric restriction and with intermittent fasting, it has also been shown that it promotes healthy aspects as well, and it also extends your lifespan and reduces the risk of diseases as well. Maybe I think there is another question popping up on chat. Can we make a change? Yes, Professor.
Yeah, I went through a question that like there are so many eat outs and so many restaurants are there, and how to enlighten the society. So this is something very subjective. There could be many restaurants en route when you go anywhere, but you need not maybe solicit all. So they will survive even if you don't go and eat at every restaurant. On a lighter note, so that is surely a very subjective maybe approach. You have to decide when do you want to eat and how much do you want to eat. Yes, please.
Okay, maybe at the last moment, I will mention something on this as well. Okay, about this. There is another question from Dr. Lily Mishra. Thank you, Dr. Mishra, for joining us. Skipping breakfast may lead to obesity. Yes, Professor Sharma, before I proceed, because yes, there has been studies, I'm pretty sure I've read a lot of studies, especially based on scientific data, that have demonstrated clearly a relationship between especially students and adults who skip breakfast. Okay, it can lead to obesity as well. Possibly this has something to do with, because overnight we fast, and then if we skip breakfast, we've got a tendency to eat much more at one particular time, especially for lunch as well. So sometimes what happens is that, we go for energy dense food for lunch and then overeat, which is basically not so good. Yes, Professor Sharma, especially on that fasting overnight and having a breakfast
Yes,
early in the morning.
Yes, Ayurveda has very clearly told you should be taking 2 meals a day. The first meal, even the time is given, it should be between 10 and 11 a.m. And the second meal has to be before the sunset. And the second meal has to be the half of the first meal. That is where breakfast is very, very important. You should take breakfast and it should be double the volume when you compare it to the dinner volume. Now, this is very important. We all have to reset our clock. We have to reset our conditioning that we should start feeling hungry like between 10 and 11 and before sunset, that is around 6 o'clock in the evening, what we know as 8-hour, 16-hour fasting these days. So those are like importance of breakfast is very well documented. It could be through Ayurveda or through the modern research, Dr. Jeevan.
Okay, thank you, Professor Sharma. I think I would sometimes tend to differ in here to a certain extent, because sometimes there might be some contradictions as well. Because sometimes some people say, even from an Ayurvedic perspective, that you eat whenever you feel hungry, because you eat if you're feeling hungry, it's a biological response. It's a physiological response that your body needs energy. And therefore, whenever you eat, it's okay. It's good. You're not going to, you're not going to gain weight or whatever. But if we try to follow what you've said, for example, if the Ayurveda's books and so on say that you should eat between, let's say, 10 to 11, which is okay. I've seen people doing that in India and even when I was in Thailand. But let's say if I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, okay, after like overnight fasting, because overnight we don't eat anything. And sometimes we take a little bit of detox in the morning, like those herbs and so on. And after 30 or 40 minutes or so, you feel a little bit like a cleansing mechanism in your body, and you start to be active a little bit. As soon as you start to be active, what basically happens, you've got your organs which tells you that, yes, I need energy now. So it opens up your stomach. You've got gastric juices that are being released. So you've got to feed it in a little bit. So how does it, tally with what you're saying, Professor Sharma? Eat at 10 or 11 o'clock.
Of course, like 10 a.m., 6 p.m. Again, this one size again will not fit all. If you're getting up early, and then you really know that you have to eat at maybe 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, then you can go ahead. Even those of like all of us, even who are taking their meals 3 times a day, who are taking a breakfast, lunch and dinner, they can also practice intermittent fasting and keep taking 3 meals. Every meal, the volume has to come down to 75%. Then they can keep enjoying the 3 meals, because there are so many like implications, or like so many factors are there. When do you leave home? What is your workplace? What is your lunch hour? You are into public dealing, or what you're traveling. So many things are there. That is where you can, you have to devise your own kind of intermittent fasting. You might not be driven by research or others, because everyone has got one's own conditioned situations.
Okay, thank you. We've got one from Scovia about intermittent fasting. Hunger gets to a level of feeling. I think we have answered it, So don't worry, Scovia, you're not going to lose your life. If you feel hungry, you should eat, believe me. Okay, but not overeat. I will come to that. Don't overeat. And Professor Sharma mentioned about it, going out with friends, energy dense food and, parties and so on, especially with alcohol and so on, excess calories and so on, excess fat. Okay. Another student of mine now, Pravesh Singh, can traditional foods help with obesity? I would say yes, and Professor Sharma can talk about it. I will back him up later on. I've got something on traditional food as well. I think Pravesh, we've did a lecture on that, on traditional food and obesity as well. But very good question. How to promote the consumption of traditional foods, because nowadays more unhealthy food are being promoted rather than healthy traditional foods. Flow to you, Professor Sharma.
Surely, again, this is very subjective because we all have got all the freedom, and that is where we have to make a very judicious choice. What do we eat, when, and how much? So there is like all the spectrum is available. Any like whatever you call a good food or a bad food or less food or more food. Now that is where you have to be really very introspective and very wise. What does your body require? Are you, for example, you could be there are many like vata people, vata pitta kapha. We might be talking about vata pitta kapha some other day. If you're a vata person, or if you have got a vata disease called diabetes mellitus, then you will always be liking, your body would be liking small frequent meals. Then you have to eat 6 times a day. Every 2 hours you should be eating very small meal. That is a plan for diabetics as well as vata people. So surely we cannot like overgeneralize it. Oversimplification will not surely be leading. That is where you have to take stock of your body type, your energy combustion, your activities, and your age, your stress level, everything you have to factor in. Then you can discuss with a dietitian or a doctor, or even you can yourself make your calculation what suits you the best. And you have to recondition yourself to the new set, because you are already conditioned to, for example, whatever which might not be the best. That is where you have to reset your appetite to better standards.
Thank you, Professor Sharma. I think Kusum is saying that if we ignore what our scriptures has advised us, especially when it comes to food, that's one of the reasons why we're developing diseases, including obesity. Yes, and obesity is on the rise nowadays. Even in Mauritius, you will see pediatric obesity is on the rise as well among school children, even among adults and so on. We are not taking care of our diet as well and neglecting physical activity. Okay, and there are no more. I think there's another one coming again from chat. Maybe I'll just read it. Mindful eating is great, but most meals are shared. How to restrict from having a conversation when eating. This is also a new cultural norm where family meets around the table to eat. How to mindfully engage in food and still maintain this family ritual. Very quickly, maybe I will comment on this, or maybe Professor Sharma is smiling. Yes, Professor Sharma. I think.
No, actually, I don't have any answer for this. Maybe if you can please help me with this.
It comes back a little bit, Professor Sharma, when you talk about eating not full, okay, and eating, because I know in India, how do they sit down and they eat. Basically, then what happens is, you don't, if you're standing up and eating, okay, your stomach is all open up, but whenever you sit down and take a different position, it's like you occupy only 70% of your stomach, so you're not eating to your full satiety, as you mentioned again. Now, coming back to that new cultural norm, okay, you have to be mindful. I think it's from, again, one of my students in here. Yes, it's from Himanshu. Okay, Himanshu, I do go out as well and eat with people. I do go out and eat with friends as well. But I'm very careful about, first of all, what do I eat? How do I eat? Okay, and how much I'm eating. Okay, so the concentration in here should be on the food to a certain extent. That doesn't mean that if you're eating and then, for 5 minutes you eat something and then you leave your food, and then start talking for, another 30 minutes and then come back to the food again, which is not something so good. There is something called food addiction as well. I'll come to that in 1 or 2 minutes because we're running out of time. What I will do is, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just do a very quick summary of what we've talked today, basically from those two speakers, Dr. Ganesh and Professor Sharma. Dr. Ganesh has talked about obesity. What is basically obesity? Basically excess fat that we are accumulating in our body. It also means that, the amount of energy that we are taking in, we are not spending that amount of energy. So basically what happens is energy intake is far more than energy expenditure. And this is what is causing obesity. Dr. Ganesh also explained to us about clinical perspectives, especially to treat obesity. There are 3 different aspects as far as I know. Basically, you've got lifestyle interventions, especially, your dieting, your physical activity. The environment plays a very important role as well. Even sometimes medication can lead to obesity as well, but we are not going into detail about that. Dr. Ganesh talked about pharmacotherapy treatment as well, especially, with drugs, medications, all the stuff that he did mention. All these drugs have been approved by the Federal Drug Administration as well. And then he did mention about bariatric surgery, which basically involves changes in your digestive system, to help you lose weight. Professor Sharma has explained a lot about, the natural ways, about fasting even, which is quite an important component, not to overeat as well. He did mention about the modifiable factors. For example, lifestyle is something very, very important. Okay. Professor Sharma, there's something that popped into my mind when you talk about Agni, which basically means fire. Possibly I'll comment on that a little bit. There are food that have a greater thermic effect. I think this is a bit like thermic, means like a bit like Agni. Okay, so basically what I mean in here is that you should eat, foody stuff that whereby your body uses more energy to digest those food, which is very important. Okay, for example, when you eat avocados, you eat beans, you eat whole grains, nuts and seeds and so on, which is quite important to a certain extent because these are food that have got great thermic effect. Red chili as well, which is important because I think Professor Sharma did mention about chilies and turmeric before in his previous talk. Chili has got capsaicin, which is basically referred to as a fat burner to a certain extent. Okay, green tea as well is important. Okay, or even like water. When you come back to turmeric also important because they interact with our fat cells to a certain extent in our body. It's called adipocytes. So there's fat cells. Okay, and I think the take-home message to a certain extent is sometimes to go for energy less dense food. For example, like dark green leafy vegetables, tomatoes, for example. Spinach, broccoli, cabbage, and other high fiber foods like celery and so on. Okay, but at the end of the day, last but not least, come back to some of the questions we have been having, especially from Himanshu about mindful eating. I think when we talk about obesity, when we talk about treatment, when we talk about losing weight as well, I think we should bear in mind our psychology. I think Sister Rupa has mentioned about the power of the mind at the very beginning. And I think this is, ladies and gentlemen, something that we should focus on a little bit. The power of the mind. It's a bit of the psychological aspect that we can try to analyze on our own. What is our current behavior towards the food? How do we analyze the food that we are eating? Okay, what types of food should we eat? Should we get addicted to food? Or should we drop down food addiction so that we don't overeat? Are we becoming a little bit obsessed with those kind of food that we're eating, in restaurants? fast food, junk food, ice cream, burgers and so on and so forth. I think it's like mindful eating over there. Okay, so again, psychology, the power of the mind is something very important. We have, or we should have, the ability to refuse eating food that are not good for our health, even buying foods that are not good for our health. I think that would be it from me, from me as a take-home message. I checked in here, there is no other comments. If I still can afford 1 or 2 minutes if anybody wants to send in a message or whatever, but I think we have had a great intervention today. We have had 2 great speakers, one talking about, the modern aspect of medicine, and we have Professor Sharma. Thank you, Dr. Ganesh, and thank you, Professor Sharma. If there is no other talk, I will leave the floor now to Sister Rupa to close, or maybe Sister Rika for the closing ceremony. Thank you again a lot for your attention. I know it's quite late, but those who are with us today, I think, have benefited a lot. I think the talks would carry on maybe in the near future, especially when we talk about health. We've got excellent resource persons today to share their knowledge. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I leave the floor to either Sister Rupa or Sister Rika for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Om Shanti, greetings of peace, everybody. We usually close our night sky with a few minutes of meditation. But before that, I would like to thank Professor Sharma, Dr. Sanjeev Ganesh, and Dr. Rajesh Jivan for this beautiful, very interactive session on a topic that concerns all of us, especially in our country with a high percentage of people affected by obesity, as are shown on the presentation by Dr. Sanjeev. And we've got plenty of insights and valuable information, and also valuable means to treat if ever we are obese or we have the tendency to be that. And a lot of emphasis have been made on diet. And in spirituality, we also speak about the diet of the mind. The mind also needs food. And there's the famous quote, as the food, so the mind, and the reverse also is very true. As the mind, so the food. But mind and body relationship is there. We are all aware of that. And I'm very much glad to hear Professor talking about the yogi's food and the normal person's food and the sick person's food, and how one is content with one meal and is healthy and is living. And the second type of person is satisfied with 2 meals and still keeping healthy. And the third type needs 3 meals to be able to live healthily. So I think the need for food, the need for eating so many times is very much connected with the mind. When the mind, and I'm speaking from someone who have an experience with meditation or yoga, if you wish, that, when the mind is contented, then it doesn't have to run after material pleasure, material satisfaction, because if the mind is empty, it will keep running around to fill its subtle stomach or subtle belly. Because it looks for peace, the mind looks for happiness, for pleasure, for contentment, for satisfaction. And if it is unable to experience it at the spiritual level, then it seeks for these through material means. And food is one of the ways which food is matter, where yes, we need it for the body, but the mind seeks pleasure, contentment, happiness through food. And this is where even though the body has taken enough food, enough to keep it fit, to keep it living, to keep it healthy, but because the mind is not satisfied, it overeats or it starts eating what is not necessary, what is not healthy. So if we are able to treat the mind to a far extent, we can keep ourselves, healthy. And so this is where meditation and spirituality helps us to balance with our physical life. So very famous quote, as the mind, so the body, and also as the mind, so the food, or as the food, so the mind. So let us enjoy 2 or 3 minutes of a guided meditation that is going to fill proper food to our mind, the food of peace, the food of love, the food of contentment, of happiness. Because as I said, when the mind is full, it won't run around and look for external pleasure. And sometimes it comes in the form of eating unnecessarily or any kind of other material sensual pleasure. So I invite you to join us in this short meditation. It will be on video, a guided meditation. Vaishnavi, can you please share? I request you all to just sit comfortably on your chair or seat wherever you are. Keep the body straight but relaxed. You can keep your eyes open and place it on the visual on the screen, or simply close them. Take a few deep, long breaths in and out, slowly, gently. Make it deep, make it long. Breathe in and then breathe out. Breathe in and then breathe out. As you breathe in, imagine you're breathing in peace and filling yourself, filling your mind with peace. So I breathe in peace and then hold that peace and then gently blow out that peace. I breathe in peace. My mind is full of peace, and then I blow out peace. One more time, I breathe in peace. I'm full of peace, and then I blow out peace. Now this time, let me fill myself with happiness, with joy. So I breathe in joy. And I feel myself full of joy inside. And gently I blow out joy. I breathe in joy. Hold that joy and then blow it out gently. I breathe in joy. I'm full of joy. And then I breathe out joy. Let me now breathe in love. I breathe in through my nose. I fill myself with pure love. And then blow out love. I take a long, deep breath full of love. Fill my mind and fill my whole being, and then blow out love. I breathe in love. Fill my whole body with the energy of love, and then gently blow out that love. I breathe in contentment. I'm full of contentment. I'm content inside. I feel full. And then gently I blow out contentment. I breathe in contentment. And then breathe out contentment. I rest my breathing to normal. And when I turn in, I can still feel the vibrations of peace, the energy of peace within me. I can feel the presence of love. I can feel myself content, satisfied, happy, filled with the light of joy. I can feel the possibilities in my mind and also in every part of my body. My body is full of peace, love, joy, happiness, contentment. When I turn within, I feel I'm in control of what is external, what is physical. I'm a master of this body and these organs. I complete my meditation with a last long breath full of peace. I breathe in peace. Then breathe out peace to the whole world. Om Shanti. So I thank you very much for joining us tonight for this very important topic discussed, and hopefully you have plenty of takeaways that you can try out and share with your close ones. And I wish to see you next Thursday for another important topic for Night Sky. And also we are keeping a topic on health every month. So meet you next Sunday. And if you're interested with any health related topic, then that would be the first Thursday of next month. So thank you so much. Have a pleasant night. And thank you to the technical team also who has been working from behind. Om Shanti. Namaskar.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti and good.
Thank you, Professor Sharma, and thank you, Dr. Ganesh.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we'll catch up soon. Maybe we'll think about another topic, and then we'll discuss next time. Okay. Om Shanti, everybody. Bye. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.